Everyone, and welcome to our Finance and Accounting Tech Spotlight. These spotlights save you time as you take a deeper dive into real tech solutions. Today's session will present Reimagine FP&A with Gen AI and Predictive Analytics. A special thanks to Una Software, today's exclusive tech spotlight sponsor. My name is Stephanie with the CFO Leadership Council, and I'll be facilitating today's session. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Your lines are muted. However, we encourage every one of your questions. Type them into the questions section and we'll address them during the Q&A portion. We're also excited to announce the dates for FATE 2026. We'll be back in New York City at the Javits Center next November 18th and 19th. We'll be joined by ABC Shark, Barbara Corkin, and you can visit Una Software live at their booth. Lock in the lowest FATE pricing now. Addressing your tech stack can be overwhelming, but we're here for you. Our Finance Academy Tech Briefing is a great resource. It's a weekly e-newsletter giving you the pulse on the hottest trending topics. The section, What's in Your Tech Stack, is my personal favorite. Visit our site to subscribe today and read the recent issues. Speaking of hot topics, let's shift gears to the big reason we've gathered today. A warm welcome to our amazing guest speaker, John Colhart, Chief Product Officer at Una Software. John, the floor is all yours.
Amazing. I really want to thank everyone for taking part of their Friday afternoon, especially for those of you that might be in the US before their Thanksgiving week, which is always a bit of travel and a bit of chaos. So hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of something as you go into your week. For those of us in other parts of the world, we have a couple of days where we might not get quite as many calls. So, hopefully the US-based members of the audience are going to enjoy next week. And for those of us that still have to do a bit of work, hopefully it's a little bit lighter with being able to focus on other things. So I missed everyone that didn't come to FATE just a couple of weeks ago now. It feels like it was like literally yesterday. I know it wasn't yesterday, but it was pretty close, like a week ago. And I really had a great time. So I am also very hopeful that everyone that is listening to this does go in and take the time to see about registering for next year, because I think it would be super fantastic for you to get there. So, we're talking about this whole idea of reimagining FP&A with Gen AI and with predictive analytics. And what's really interesting to me is I kind of go back a long way in technology for CFOs. I started my career as a failed accountant. I say that very jokingly. I just decided that the chartered accountancy in Canada or the CPA in the US just wasn't the right mix for me of how I wanted to move my future. I really wanted to stay close to technology, and that meant that I needed to spend more time really investing in what is the technology of the future going to be. And anyways, meandered my way for the first decade or so of my career, delivering solutions to organizations big and small, large banks, large manufacturers, industry leaders across pretty much every sector. And I was very fortunate that the business that we had started and grown got acquired by IBM. And why was that so fortunate? It was fortunate because IBM right at that time was starting to get ready for its Jeopardy announcement with IBM Watson. And so I got to be on the fairly ground floor of what was data and analytics going to look like in this world of AI. And remember, this is 15 years ago, right? This is 2010. 2011 was when the Watson bot essentially beat Ken and a few others, right? Also got some things wildly wrong, as you may recall. But what it meant was the team that I was working with at the time, we were able to really start reimagining a world that is very, very different because we're able to use these technologies. Now, the amazing part is that over those 15 years where predictive analytics was already a thing, but mostly in academia, AI question and answer bots were a thing. But again, usually if you're only willing to spend, 7-8 figures a year with the technology provider and with limited value from the perspective of to your masses of people, right? There was still a lot of incubation that had to happen over these last years. And what's really amazing is if you also plot the course of technology that are in our pockets that you guys might be even dialing in from, right, or videoing in from, is how much better technology has been at delivering this seamless experience between a device, whether that be a laptop, an iPad, a phone, to a cloud service, which is then running who knows where, which hopefully you do find that out, because I think there's a bunch of people that would say that security is a big thing, and being able to really deliver you a great experience. So from my perspective, my lens, it's been a really wild ride the last 15 years as we've kind of got to this point. I went and built a startup in the finance and accounting space, more specifically for controllers and internal auditors, as well as your external auditors, and wildly successful, because now imagine your audit with not having to just randomly sample, 15 things out of a part of your subledgers. Now you can actually have full coverage, and that's a very significant, impact. When I left and decided to help the business, help Una start, what really came down to me was this type of quote. So I started Feb 2024, so right when this quote was coming out, and I had some knowledge from working with the Big Four, not specifically Deloitte, but with another one, where this is exactly what was happening at the moment. Everyone was like, yes, AI is here. Yes, predictive is here. Yes, oh, how am I actually going to deploy this? How am I going to make sense of it? How am I going to get my user community to be engaged with technology in a healthy way for me, right? And so this Deloitte CFO signals, and just like Deloitte has these things, definitely go back and look at CFO leadership, and look at that weekly subscription for their notes. There's some really great nuggets all over the place, right, in these pieces of information, and we can now summarize them differently, right? You can actually use Gemini or Claude or OpenAI to summarize the vast volumes of emails we're getting. But this one I took out because it really is this issue of your leadership teams, whether you're on the board or not, whether you're the CFO or one of the execs rolling up to the CFO, there is a significant amount of pressure to deploy AI, but we need to see more measurable impacts. And so hopefully in today's session, over the next 30 minutes, 35 minutes roughly, I can give you some of that. So what is your reality today? From my perspective, it's insane, right? The amount of data that's flowing through your organization and all the different operational areas is sort of unparalleled. We've never seen this. When I was still at IBM, I believe the number was we were generating, in financial data terms, we were generating in 18 months the same amount of financial data that had been generated in the previous decade. And I'm sure that's even bigger. So imagine 1.5 years, 18 months, you were generating the same volume of raw data, financial data, as you did the previous 10 years. And because we're all moving to these, bigger systems with more interesting pieces of information, guaranteed this has exploded and expanded. And what that means is, as you start looking at how you can adopt technology, you really do have to ask yourself the question of, if I've got this much data, how do I make sense of it? And right now, your barriers are, total cost of ownership over 5 years is hard with traditional systems. I'll talk about that further. Executives say agile planning is critical, but they can't actually get there. Again, same thing. And just trying to do the analytics of where we are in, the current environment is pretty hard depending on the industry you're in. Now, I was with a senior investor over at Warburg Pincus yesterday, and I found it really fascinating that when you look at technology is a very insulated industry right now comparatively to all the other industries that might be affected by tariffs or something sort of more geopolitical, more macroeconomically. That doesn't mean that we're not susceptible to issues, right? How many of you heard of friends or family or someone in your network who's been recently resource actioned out of a technology company? So technology companies are fairly insulated because there is this drive to AI, to cloud, to further refine and create better performance of businesses, but that's also coming at a cost. So where are we, right? We are at a point, and this is again just after I joined Una as one of the founding team. This came out, and I was like, yeah, this is exactly the case. I have yet to meet an FP&A team that has more people than they have daily tasks or monthly tasks to deal with, right? What's happening is these teams, sometimes relatively small, and I walked the conference floor last week. Had lots of people come to the booth at Fate last week, and we definitely found that there were lots of teams of one, teams of three, teams of five. I don't think I heard from any business, big or small, that they sort of eclipse the baker's dozen, right? I don't even know that I heard someone break 10. And what that means is you're being asked to do more complex things with more complex data over a shorter time period, and just getting through that is going to be really awful for some people. So let's try to fix some of that, right? Let's try to envision a world where you could actually start thinking about your world differently, leveraging these tools and either expanding your own capacity, expanding your team's capacity, or ideally starting to just remove barriers that you don't need to have. Now, I throw this slide up here because being a tech expo, sort of session for you today, I keep thinking about why did we even build Una? In the marketplace, when we sold our last business, or my first business, I say our last because there's actually been others in between, and I'll explain that in a second. When we sold our first business to IBM into the Cognos Planning Analytics team, there were probably a dozen amazing competitors in the space. This was the big guys, SAP with BPC, Oracle with all of the Hyperion product lines, and then you had a whole bunch of others, right? You had Adaptive, which is still a going concern right now. You had the precursor to Planful in terms of naming, anyways. They were around at this time. So you had all these generation one tools, which were really, really, really helpful, right? They did all these things. They would allow you to do management reporting and long range planning and balance sheet and income, and like the three statement stuff. You could do all of these things. Then around 2015, well, actually probably from 2011 through 2017, generation two tools came along, right? So generation two tools to me they were sort of born in more of that cloud environment, right? So everything before had to migrate to cloud, and they caused a huge amount of heartburn and heartache for people. But then you have these generation two tools, which were built in the cloud, right? Or for the cloud at least. And the problem is they still relied on a lot of the same, technology stacks, just moved into a more distributed way. So yes, they were faster. Some of them were way more elegant because there was better, web technology. Some of them that were built. One of our executive chairman and a couple of the founding team members were either the founder or first 10 employees over at Vena, right? So they embraced what they had at that point. But what's really happened is sort of post 2017, 18. Not a lot really happened just as we launched into COVID, but definitely post-COVID, there's a lot of us that have come out as Gen 3. And Gen 3 really means that it's actually built in the AI era. And so some are taking different approaches to this, for sure. But what all of us are really trying to do is we are desperately trying to make sure that we drive a more simplistic, straightforward way for you to do complex planning. Because at the end of the day, your world has gotten more complex. Your world has become way more diverse in terms of the type and size and style of data that you have. Your businesses are constantly changing, right? We have this little tagline, probably see it if you see my video stream, like plans have changed. That is to me, recognition of the fact that your businesses have changed, right? And so you need technology that can start doing things in a very different way. So traditional tools, especially the Gen 2s, maybe some of the Gen 3s, some of the more current emergents, they are all struggling with some of these same things. And what I would say is, if I could read them all out, but I'm going to pick a few of them to just talk about in a little bit more detail, right? For me, I believe that we need to provide value to a business inside of 1 month, right? That's not to say that everything you want to deploy in any of these tools can be done in a month, but you need to be asking those questions about, will you, partner who I'm going to partner with, we hope it's Una, of course, will you stand beside me and go from 1 month to the next and see some type of marginal improvement or maximal improvement in something I'm doing, right? This is typically the first point of like the trough of despair or the crossing the chasm, right? You sort of have this really great idea, I'm going to deploy this AI software, and then I get into the trough of disillusionment. and then I come out the other end. We need to shorten that gap between what you thought you were getting and what you are getting. Because when you think about deployments of solutions, you don't have time today, right? You don't have time to take 3 months, 6 months to reorient your entire business to this new software, because by the time you finish that, you're actually probably going to be implementing something else. So I'd say flexibility, adaptability, and being assistive should be one of those first things that you think about, right? Try not to deal with customized deployments. Deal with something that can jump out of the box, do what it says on the tin, and really give you value immediately. I think that's super important. I'm going to pick the other side for a second. I'm going to talk about revenue. So one of the things I said while I was on stage at Fate and in my session, and I'm going to reiterate it, right? Me as chief product officer, right? I'm all about trying to design something that is too advanced that you're probably never going to want to use right now in this moment. And my reason for that is I want to build you something that you can grow into. I want the businesses you're working with to want to aspire to deliver a new revolution and revelation in planning in your future. I'm picking on the low confidence in revenue forecast because the other thing I said on that is I don't want to work with, me personally, not saying this is necessarily Una's, but I think we all feel it. We want businesses that want to partner with us who are really interested in their growth. And their growth to me starts with revenue and obviously, holistically looks at their EBITDA sort of numbers and their key KPIs in this. But I don't want to work with people that don't believe that enhancing the way they think about how their business makes money in order to have better decision making on how and where they're going to spend money, I think is something that I want to avoid. And one of the reasons that people have low confidence in forecasts is because of the systems that are involved, right? We have manufacturing clients, we have some health tech clients, we have large, sort of distributors of products. And what's really interesting about the 3 or 4 or 5, or I can kind of go on and on probably, of all the different sort of customer industries we're working with, is each one definitely has revenue, right? They're growing, they're building their business, they're doing something with their business. Maybe they're protecting revenue, right? What's really fascinating is the systems that are underpinning that, right? So most businesses have some type of professional that is responsible to sell their product or service. And in some industries, that's like, a manufacturer. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go to a trade show because I sell this widget, and we're the best thing in that thing. And you should definitely want us and incorporate us. I'm in financial services, right? I have someone selling maybe a product that I have in terms of asset under management, right? If I am a retailer, like maybe there's just ways that I want to get in front of people to use us as their first choice versus another. At the end of the day, you have someone that is trying to sell, the thing that you have, and you've got to find ways to do it. And if you can look at that and say, okay, well, that could mean I've got a CRM, that could mean I've got a billing system, that could mean I've got a distribution system that I've got to understand to make sure that the actual revenue that I had planned for gets delivered because I can't recognize it until whatever, the client has in their hands, whatever that looks like. If you don't have these things connected, it becomes really hard to get confidence in that revenue data. And then I'll pick on one other, and then I'll kind of move on. I am watching the clock because I do want to make sure that this is somewhat pointed, and you can always come and ask me questions. And actually, while I'm making that slight segue, by all means, throw stuff in the question and answer inside the environment. I am sort of scanning those. The team at the CFO Leadership Council are also, doing a scan of those, so they will plop those into me as we get them. And happily, I will answer things on the fly as well. If something strikes a chord, drop me a comment or a note or something so that I can respond. So I'll pick the last one that I'm going to focus on here, and then we can move to the next slide, which is kind of exciting because it's like, okay, now AI. And what I'd say is looking at the ability to involve the team in being performant. So what does this mean to Una, and what does this mean in my world when I say it's a challenge? Today, when you're doing planning, when you're doing forecasting, maybe even your monthly management reporting, you're putting in a whole bunch of notations somewhere. Now, for some products, it's literally not in the product, and it's actually some shadow Excel or a PowerPoint or something that you've built, right? So you lose track of what's there just by virtue of the fact that it's not in your actual solution that you've chosen to partner with. If it is in the solution, it's a row note, it's a line in detail. Like these are terms that we've used for 20 years. So most of the tools have something like that. The problem is like, how do you know that someone is actually working on the thing that you want them working on? How do you know that, hey, we plan to hire 2 marketing professionals to run our new event structure because we're going into this new channel, and they need to be here by February the 15th at the latest because our first event is on May the 1st, and they have like 6 weeks to basically roll up and get prepared. Otherwise, my current team is going to just be overwhelmed and we're going to miss something else. Where does that go, right? Where does that go at the end of your plan? Where does that, how do you even notify your HR partner that, hey, we asked for these 3 headcount and these 2 were approved? You know, do you have it out on our corporate website that we're hiring yet? Like, you know, come on, we're done, you know, we're nearly done the end of the year, and I got to have these people in place in the next 6 to 8 weeks, whatever the time frame is. So the problem of driving performance usually means you're actually fully disconnected, because those notes become, it's almost like amnesia, right? Or I imagine it would be. I've never had amnesia, thankfully. I've been hit in the head a lot of times, but as my career as an athlete, but never a concussion, which is great. Never any sort of memory loss. But I almost imagine it being like amnesia, right? You finish your plan. We go out for Thanksgiving week, because I've already talked about this a little bit. You know, you're traveling on the Wednesday, which is one of the busiest travel days in all of the year. It's really, really crazy in U.S. airports. For any of you that aren't in the U.S., I used to love this time of year because I worked in New York, and it would be like, you know, can I get out on Tuesday night so that I'm not flying on Wednesday? And New York to back to my home, which is Ottawa, is super simple. It's an hour, 45-minute flight. Like, there's usually nothing in my way, but there's lots of people in the airport which end up in my way. But like, you're done your plan, right? It's Thanksgiving. You go for Thanksgiving. You've submitted your plan. You know, if you're not the CFO is probably still working with the board. You know, maybe right through till almost holiday season, or end of year, however it is that you sort of observe, right? And that time is 4 to 6 weeks, right? And then you're starting the new year. Like, you are literally, if you're a calendar year end business, right, you're starting. And so what that means for most people is if you can't tie all of the actions, all of the things that you're working on into, right, something that is meaningful for the more collaborative team to participate in, then you're just naturally going to have a challenge, right? Okay, so let's get to the next fun slide, right? So the next fun slide, what is that? What are we talking about? It's about how do we actually move things forward, and how do we make sure that we create a journey for you to adopt and embrace AI within your financial planning and analytics solution sets, right? And this may be, again, if you're using Una, this may be a full replacement over time of everything you're doing today. This may be, you know, starting with something really small, like, you know, monthly reforecasting of revenue, whatever it looks like to you, right? I think the premise should still apply. So I listed out these 5 buckets of what the journey should look like, and I kind of tie them together because I believe that when we're starting to think about where AI is most impactful, you actually have to go to the foundation, right? There's lots of tooling out here. I've already talked about that. You know, there's probably, of the competitors that I've seen in the space from a solution offering, from an Una perspective, right, those competitors, some of them have been around for many years, and they have absolutely turned on the jets and put AI in their solutions. Typically, I'm seeing that as how people think about a chatbot, right? OpenAI's ChatGPT, or Google's Gemini, or, you know, Grok, like whatever your flavor is. And that's usually a way for you to ask about some analysis, or maybe say, hey, could you create a forecast for me that looks like this? And I consider that a little bit of bolt-on AI, because for me, I believe you have to start your journey much earlier in leveraging AI capabilities. Why? Because of the things I just had in the last slide, and I'll reiterate some of them. Number 1 is modeling, right? When you are starting to think about how your business has changed this year and how it's likely to change next year and the year after and the year after, you want to be working with a tool that has the ability to help you change without a whole lot of re-implementation, right? And AI provides an amazing opportunity to not only accelerate you to the first time of value. Like I said, Una tries to do this in under a month with core critical mission, you know, issue that you're trying to focus on. You know, let's say that's that revenue forecast plus your monthly management reporting. Like, you need to be done and in tool inside of a month, because the very next month you're in that reforecast. Like, why would you spend money on a tool and then wait for, you know, 3-6 months to actually be able to use it? But when you start thinking about the first step, it's like, how do we model and how do we augment models over time as new data becomes available? You know, we're working with businesses who are literally ripping out systems and putting new systems in all the time. You know, one of our partners, from a clientele perspective, you know, they've been on this journey with their ERP. It happens to be NetSuite, and they're looking to make a change in the new year, and they're looking to make a change because, you know, when it was first implemented, the business had a shape, a look and a feel, and a, you know, set of requirements, and they've pivoted that business significantly, which means they've got to overhaul their chart of accounts anyways. They've got to overhaul departments and all these things. So they might as well go out to market and see something new. So how does your system work within that context? I think that you need to be thinking about where AI can help you in that modeling. So building the model, maintaining the model, providing you commentary, and agentically trying to figure out where those new account numbers are, where those new products are, where those new whatever they are, how they fit into your model. And I think you need to look at that. The second piece is around data and data quality, right? At the end of the day, accessing your own data from all these other systems can sometimes be challenging. They can sometimes be sort of difficult. And what we would like nothing more is for this to be like, poof, I ask my Una bot a question and it just goes and does everything. The reality is you probably also don't want that yet. That's the whole too advanced, not acceptable thing. And I'll kind of summarize that in a slide in a second, but you probably don't want a black box. You actually want to see what data is being transferred, why it's being transferred, how it's being mapped, right? But AI can absolutely be used to get you to the starting point. But then it's the second side, which is, okay, now that data's there, let's take CRM data. Not trying to bemoan the personalities and the amazingness of our marketing and sales teams that might work with us, but generally speaking, CRM data is always sparse. CRM data is always uh, less filled in and less rigorously validated, and so therefore we have problems, right? So how do you get to data quality? How do you use that for predictive when data is just literally missing, right? Anomaly detection, automated data quality processing of that data when it first gets loaded, and notify you when it thinks there might be issues of quality, and guides you to say, oh, well, maybe you should forecast on these dimensions versus those dimensions in that CRM data. I think that's a really good thing. I think you should be looking for solutions to do that, because you're going to swap out a system at some point. You're going to add a new system. You're going to change part of your business, and you want to look at your fulfillment or whatever it looks like. And that just naturally means, going back to step one, you got to update the model. Step two, you've got to make sure the data is great for you, right? Step three in your AI journey should be all about that analysis and assessment, right? It should be able to look across your entire data universe and provide you some interesting insights and some interesting guidance, right? And I think that for me, you know, that always comes down to the way that people are first experiencing it, very much like we used to use Google as our main search engine, right? People are going to go to a generative platform, and they're going to ask a question or explain their scenario, and then, you know, hopefully you're getting better and better at prompting, and it will give you information. You want a solution that not only can do that based on going and getting you external data, but also keep your data safe and secure inside your environment, so that you know that it's actually, you know, useful and helpful to you. Then, of course, like, why are we here, right? Forecasting, planning. You want something that can actually do this for you more effectively, right? So, so that is a really big thing, that you should have a solution, right, that can provide predictive forecasting and scenario modeling and all these other things, right? And then finally, to be able to take performative action. And this was that last point I had on the last slide. I really do believe that we need to move away from the amnesia-based, you know, shadow model-based, whether it's in a spreadsheet, a PowerPoint, whatever it is. We need to connect all of these pieces and have AI support you in summarizing some of that data and recommending actions and recommending team members that you should bring into the fold, even if they're not, you know, necessarily part of the approval process, but they might have actions that actually matter in fulfilling whatever that you know, goal is, or that KPI is. So I'll go to the next slide, and then I'll take a quick pause. So to answer a question. So the next slide is all about my most important thing for you. My view is I have to deliver you in a way that you can accept AI, a most advanced yet acceptable product. What I need from you, right, is that you can look at that journey slide I had for you and figure out what your Maya is. As I said, from an Una perspective, we're trying to get you live in 4 weeks or less. It may not be absolutely everything. Like if all of a sudden you said, yeah, I want to do, 3-statement forecasting and detailed workforce planning, detailed vendor management and contract management, get into capital assets. Also I want to go out and do derivative planning and I want to go do treasury management. Like, whoa, that's a lot of things to do in 4 weeks. You're probably not going to be able to, even if we gave you all the resources, all the pre-built models to go do that, you will probably not be able to consume it. Okay. So for you, the ask is that you think about that journey slide, you think about where you are vis-a-vis tooling and data and all these things, and create bite-sized chunks that you can grow and change and build into, because you'll just have a much healthier experience as you actually roll out. Our job is to make that as big of a bang in the first month as possible, so that the next month we can add a little bit more, and the next month we can add a little bit more if you need it, right? If we could do it all in a month, we will, and I'll explain that a little bit more when we get into our actual tech. All right, so question, we're 25 minutes in and I've got my first question, which I always love to see, and thank you so much to whoever asked this question. How does your product protect the privacy of our data? This is so massive with AI, right? As I mentioned, built a company with some really great friends of mine now that was all about auditing, so you can imagine, this is like literally getting into your your business in a pretty deep way, going and looking at your subledgers, going and looking at receivables data, payables data, customer order entry data, whatever you've got, and showing you anomalies. So one of the things I learned in that journey, I was there for 7 years, and I brought here, was that when you start building technology in the AI era, you really have to start thinking about what privacy means, what data processing means, and make sure that you can, essentially pass things like SOC 2 Type 2, which, by the way, Una has. So first and foremost, we have all the standard operating controls and procedures so that we are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, right? That was a really big thing right out of the gate. But what that actually means, like, let's get into the details. What does this actually mean? What this means is when you're within the Una ecosystem, and I'll show you the ecosystem in a second, and through the vein of a web page, all of that back-end infrastructure is entirely yours, right? Yes, you happen to be like, think of it as renting it from us, but that data infrastructure is yours. Whatever data you load in there is yours. Whatever data we process is yours. However you decide to manipulate that data, that's all yours. You can get it out any point in time, not a problem. Now, the question about then making sure that it's private and secured, right? There's the common things that every business you're working with should do. It should be an isolated tenant for that data stack, right? That data stack should not be multi-tenant. In the early versions of cloud technology, not in this industry, so I'm not going to pick on any of my competitors, but in the industry of CRM, which is still somewhat consistent today, you are part of this monolithic data storage point unless you pay a massive premium to host your own data in your own way. So that means that there's more risk. In planning, analytics, and anything financial, your data isolation is critical. You start there. Then you start talking about things like encryption at rest, encryption in transit, all those things. Your IT team will love talking to my guys and gals that do this for a living, because our whole job is to make sure that they are comfortable with our posture and how we do that. But when it comes to AI, what everyone's really worried about, and that's why I love this question, so thank you again to whoever asked it, is AI solutions right now require lots of data, right? The reason, I mean, Gemini 3 just launched, like in the last 48 hours, can't remember exactly when. Claude just in the last week announced support for JSON, which means streaming of more data into Anthropic's data environments. Awesome, right? They've got a certain level of security. You definitely should be reading those and looking at those. When it comes to the way that Una thinks about that next piece, which is when you ask a question of the Una supervisor, which means it needs to go out and look at potentially external data, like what is the future market price for this, or what are my FX rates likely to be, or could you give me a summary of how people are managing conversion rates from that lead that's come in through that web front end, and how I get it to be an opportunity that one of my salespeople can follow up on, right? That external to you data should be 100% available to you in anything that Una does, but your data should not go with it. So let's just pick on the last one for a second. You have a whole bunch of, you've got a marketing event, or you've got a website that you're gathering a whole bunch of data, and you're trying to prompt that potential customer to be your customer. At the end of the day, we partner with an organization called Winning by Design, who we believe has some really amazing ways to think about conversion rates. Now, you don't have to be a SaaS business to think about conversion rates. You have a website, you have maybe virtual events, you may have live events, you may have digital content that goes out, you may have print content that goes out. All you're trying to do is get that person to show an expression of interest, and you likely have a salesperson of some kind taking down whatever that opportunity is, right? Selling of more widgets, adding, money to your funds, like whatever that is, it doesn't matter. You have this process. Winning by design is great because it has benchmarks and it has isolated. These are the types of conversions by industry, by average annual contract value averages, how long it should take, and what the conversion rate should be from lead to that opportunity to that closed won business for you. Awesome. We want to calculate those things for you based on your data. Stop there. Go and ask Winning by Design, hey, what should this business kind of look like? It pulls back that thing and it mashes it together inside your own isolated tenant, and it shows you maybe some guidance. Hey, your conversion rate is, right at par, but if you want to enhance it further because your revenue will then go up by what, that will all be done within your tenant. So our job is go really deeply in. So for whoever asked that data, privacy question, I can go really deep in it. I've probably gone too far already, and the team's kind of like, gosh, get off of this thing. But I do really think that it's super important for people to understand what this means to them, because it's really important, right? This is your business, your data, your environments. So I'm going to take a small segue out to just look at the actual application, look at the product, and show you a little bit of what I'm talking about, so that you can get a really good flavor for it. And I'm going to do this through a more automated video that I created, so that it's just a little bit easier for everyone, and it won't be sort of as like interactive. I'm not going to type in all the things that need to be typed in, but I'm just going to go to full screen here. I'm fairly positive as I do this, unless Brittany or Stephanie tell me otherwise, this should all be, live and in front of you. So I'm going to talk about this in terms of, okay, very quickly, right? Let's talk about the model, right? There's some stuff in here. I'm going to come back to this, don't worry. But let's talk about your model. A big piece of the hesitation that people have in delivering on a change from where they are today to their thing of tomorrow is because it takes so long to model, it takes so long to build out templates and reports. So the way that the system is designed is it's designed to give you assistive tools all along the way. And remember that last slide I had, which was, most advanced yet acceptable. I could take a file, right? And I'm going to go and actually load a file right now. I could take this file, right? It's essentially, well, you'll see it in a second. It's just a data dump of, this year's data, right? Boom, a couple of rows and columns, right? Down as far as it goes. I could take this entire file and build you a model 100% agentically, right? So the agents just know what to do with it, build the calculations, build the summary points, all the way to the end. That is likely going to be too advanced, not acceptable, because you don't have any idea what it just did. And there may be some nuances that, listen, if we're moving from a spreadsheet, you kind of probably need to know what that means and how to get there. So I am going to add a little bit more context to the data. I'm going to add a chart of accounts file. I do that sometimes because I have them. Most ERPs today can just dump one out. But what it allows me to do is skip a step of automatically trying to figure out what your roll-ups are. So it wants to know, okay, well, what is the actual name of that? We think about these things in two fields, right? Typically, what's the name, the thing, the codec thing that you capture, and what's the descriptive thing that you capture? Boom, no problem. I've got this, account name, and I've got this description. Great, happy with those two columns. It will automatically infer, hey, I see these things that kind of look like this. I'm going to use them as my account. So basically, you're just getting this ability to like, yes, okay, do all these things with it. So this is where that agent is going and doing a bunch of work, but we want this responsive human in the loop experience for you so that you can actually kind of get there. Okay, so I've done that part. Great. Next, I want to go and look at and see, okay, like let's go really simply and only pull in this year's data just so that it's really straightforward and a little bit faster for you. Okay, yep, got it. I've got all these pieces. You know what? I'm going to say that I want to build the whole year. Boom, boom, boom. Obviously, it's going to go do that. I can then have it auto build my quarters and my structure. Boom. Okay, next, what else do you have in here? Well, it's actual data, but I'm building a financial planning thing, so I probably want to have like a budget or something. So I can just go in and have a bucket for budget. We'll deal with the data mapping a little bit later. And based on that original file, you may or may not have seen it, I had some data in there that was talking about some things, products, entities, departments, other things that you likely have in a data export like that. And I can choose which ones do I want to have and whatnot. It's showing me a preview of the data that exists. I can add more dimensions. So if I have a channel or a segment or like some other thing, just add it in. The system will add a default number where everything will go to. And then when you have more data, you remap through the data maps and everything's done for you, right? I say that a little bit tongue in cheek because again, we try to create a way that you can have the AI do a whole bunch of work for you, but at the same time, you can. It's like trust but verify, right? How do you build confidence in any system? You trust but verify. So you trust that it's doing the right things, but you verify and validate the things are happening. Okay, I'm going to skip some of the data loading. It's going to say, yep, yeah, I'm happy with that for department. What else did I have? What was the next one? Oh, right. No, I don't care about loading my product dimension. Okay, it sees the products that I have. That's right. And finally, it gives me my entity dimension. And yeah, those are the right columns. So I can always go back and finish these things. And what's kind of great about this is it's giving me a preview of the data. It's showing me what it's trying to do. It then tells me exactly what data it's trying to map. We can get into the technical terms of all these things. I should probably give you a name for this new thing, this new model. So I'm going to go and create JC demo. And now the system is building that model. It's loading up the data. And here's the kicker, right? So again, might be too advanced, not acceptable for you today, but the whole purpose of doing this is so that the templates and reports, we call them canvases, that come out of the box. I called it like, works as advertised, what's on the tin is what you get out of the box, right? Now what's happened is it's going and mapping and trying to align any input form in Canvas, so like a revenue template, an expense template, a 3-statement cash flow, whatever it is, and it will go and automatically try to match and align that to the data you just loaded. Now again, might be a little too advanced, so sometimes people need to go and actually have it do things. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, of where I need some of this data and what I want to show in terms of my flows. And now I've got this model, I've got all those canvases working, I've got all the pieces, and now I can ask it more questions. I can go and be notified, hey, that data just got loaded, and by the way, you have this really big variance compared to your plan, right? Okay, what does that look like? Yeah, I've got this, fine. I'll put a note in, I'll save that data. I don't know, maybe it's, what am I spending here? Oh, it's travel. So it's probably likely that I, pre-booked travel in June for the balance of the year because there was some seat sale on or something. I don't know. We'll do something like that. We can now give that information in and context in. We can dismiss that that notification. If there's other downstream effects to this, so this could be like our CFO might, automatically go in and see, yep, that's an overstatement, but Tony already taken care of it. But now I've got another issue because we've overspent now. We've got a runway issue. Like there's lots of things that the system can do with this data. So I'm going to go back to slides here in just one second. If you do have more questions, ask them. We are going to run right up to the time unless you do. And I just want to kind of cover off a couple of things for you. So what does that look like? Oops, let's go to PowerPoint. And if I go to full screen mode, you will be able to see it. Here's my final thoughts on some pieces, right? Number one, look for quick wins, right? AI is not meant to be a laborious, challenging implementation anymore. It's not like when I was at IBM, very first time, and it would take us, 4 to 6 weeks just to answer a few questions about your data. Like you can load data today, and if you were willing to put stuff in the public cloud, you could literally load your income statement and balance sheet, and it would produce you a cash flow statement. Like today, like you could do that, and it's probably going to take 5 minutes or less to do. The problem is AI, if you ask it the same question 5 different days with all even the same data, you will get 5 different responses, right? Some of which may or may not be hallucinations, right? So when you think about deploying, and what I would say is look for something that you can demonstrate value like immediately. I would even love to say that your report management reports, like the 3 statements, if your data loads and you've got that model built, if we're not showing you those reports and ready for the next load of data inside of a week, then that's probably something that would be challenging. Ready for next monthly forecast is what we're trying to get you to, right? So try to create a quick win. Don't try to boil the ocean because you're going to change, right? Number 2, right? Tie it to team objectives, right? At the end of the day, this is great for you. Like if you're not the CFO, even if you are the CFO, but if you're not the CFO, what is the best way for you to be successful, right? The best way for you to be successful is deliver value to the business. So if you run the team or you are the team, get something that's achievable, right? Make sure it's to whatever that objective is. And then finally, drive business impact, right? Always tie it to I'm going to deploy this software so that I can do this. And that this might be a more accurate forecast in 2 months. This might be I can deliver my management reports on time with people adding commentary that weren't able to add them before, whatever that looks like for you, but make sure that it's driving in action. So I know I'm right at the top. I don't see any other Q&A that we haven't already responded to directly to those individuals. So I think the team has done great. Thank you so much, team, by the way, for doing that for me. So I think we've answered everything. If we haven't answered your thing, definitely let us know. The team knows how to get a hold of me. It's pretty easy. Like I'm on LinkedIn and everyone's kind of connected somewhere somehow. And I'll leave you with this final thought, right? It's about becoming performant and it's about being different in a good way. We want you to go from all of that go-to-market energy that you're trying to drive revenue through to better accuracy so that you can be more critical of where you're spending the money based on the revenue you're trying to tackle, and make sure that we're putting insights in front of you so that you can actually drive planning cycles faster. Like what happens if we delete the annual operating plan and we just go with monthly or biweekly free forecasts? Like to me, that sounds like maybe too advanced for some of you, but it might be what you need to start thinking about because AI should be able to get you there if you start setting it from that foundation, that model, that data, all the way through to the assessment analysis, all the way through to taking those actions. So it's been awesome. Sorry that it's all one way. If you need to get a hold of me, the team knows how. Thank you to the CFO
Thank,
Leadership Council team.
thank you, John. Thank you for delivering such an insightful webinar, and thank you all for connecting with us today. Thank you for the entire Una software team for helping us. And I'd like to think, like John said, as just the conversation started, this is just a virtual handshake. Keep the conversation going, reach out with any follow-up questions. Look for our post-event email, which will include a link to the full recording, more info on Una. And this does conclude today's spotlight. Until next time, stay well, stay curious, and stay connected.